Right, it's the Mad Master here. I'm doing a video this today about something that's I'm going to talk in very veiled language about because of an argument that I had through a YouTube comment about a certain famous film director that has been accused of certain things. And try to see if I can get away with this video, and if not, whatever. I have BitChute and probably gonna put some videos on some other places too. So this is basically about a certain subculture of music called rock, and about how a certain, there were certain behaviors that would, that were participated in by these so-called music, rockers that were would not be accepted today. And if there were no statute of limitations, they would probably be arrested and put in prison. So I had a commenter, and I believe she might have been a subscriber, that accused me of defending this certain behavior that these musicians participated in. Now, I'm just going to say this: there is nuance to be had here, and I'm not into, I'm not. This behavior doesn't really appeal to me. Now, at the same time, as far as like in general, if I were a rock star and if I had, groupies, I would not mind that. I mean, I'll be honest, it is kind of a thing, like that, you're a musician that's coming up or growing up, you're, like, oh my God, I can get all these groupies and stuff. It doesn't mean I want that certain demographic of groupies, though, of course. At the same time, though, it's our natural inclinations to, want that type of thing. I mean, I'm not talking about, the problematic side of it. I'm talking about, just having that kind of a level of attention. But my point is that these behaviors that were participated in by these people have to be seen in the light of historical precedents and historical lens in general of socio-political things in the times, and just how we view things in general nowadays about these certain things. So the problem with looking at it now is that we have to look at what happened back then and see if, dare I say, the C word happened or not. And with we can say with speculation that in these contexts there was, I mean, there was probably that C word probably did happen. And that C word ends with a T, and CONSENT. And that's a problematic thing to say, but I think in the context of these situations where many times people don't want to have that, that say that. In certain situations, definitely it was very problematic and very, over the edge of whether or not it should be society should accept these things or not. And I'd say we have to look at a case by case basis. Now, I was accused of something in these YouTube comments by this now former subscriber, I guess, of glossing over this, and I was accused of excusing the H word if you look it up, versus. I think that these situations have to be seen in context and with more nuance than the regular other word that goes a little bit below a certain number, of course, if you know what I mean. I'm going to see if this YouTube, I don't know if I'm going to, what's going to happen with this video. Hopefully it'll be accepted, but I don't think I'm really talking about anything that crazy. So I know my channel is problematic. And it could be canceled. I could get another strike. I don't know. Anytime, but I'm trying not to. But if I do, I have other platforms anyways. I just do this as a release and a thing. Now, I have to do this video, though, in part because I know the lens could be on me in the future for various reasons. I'm, an entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur. I'm going to be doing more open mic comedy. I'm not saying I'm going to be famous from comedy or music or anything like that. I'm just saying, it could happen. So, Matt has this YouTube channel where he talks about all this crazy shit. I'm just going to be like, and we're gonna have to cancel him. Well, I made a new shirt, by the way, for my shirt company that's gonna be premiering too pretty soon. It's gonna be it's like it's pretty funny. It's about cancel culture. So we have to look at these things, with a grain of salt. Every situation with these problematic encounters back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and possibly 90s and 50s, probably, it was probably a little different. All of those bad, across the board, unacceptable, horrible things that happened. And the people that oftentimes initiated those encounters, are they traumatized by these encounters now? Or were they afterwards? That's a question we have to have. And I would say unflinchingly, no. I would say in some situations, probably. I read this book, what was it called? Please Kill Me by Legs McNeil and Gillian. I can't remember her name. I have to look. It's on my bookshelf. It was about punk culture in like the early 70s and mid 70s and stuff, the rising New York punk culture. And some of the stuff was appalling. Iggy Pop is particularly with some of his behaviors. I was just kind of disgusted. I actually kind of shuddered because of the behaviors that they did. But are we going to say, oh, Iggy Pop has to go to prison for what he did in 1972? Or, is he like a violent P word, PR? I'm talking about the PR word, not the other P word. Of course, that could be accused of as well in some of these situations. No, I just think we should look at these things in context. That's all I'm saying. I think when situations like that happen, it depends on the context. Certain people, like that certain R&B person that got arrested, a certain famous financier that got arrested. That's a different type of situation. But fucking Def Leppard, what they did in 1985 or something backstage, completely different context. Completely different. And that's what I think, that's why I'm bothered when people do these blanket statements, about certain situations when they don't look into it, more, or when they just accuse someone of being defending something that they're not, which I'm not. I'm not defending what Def Leppard did backstage in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1985 with whatever, we watch all these rock, but that is part of the thing though with me is, yeah, some of my idols have been these kinds of people that have partaken in some of this behavior. Now, groupie culture in general is a complicated thing. There should be more psychosocial kind of, studies about this stuff. I think we need to look into this kind of phenomenon. But, when someone's knocking down your fucking door and like hides in your hotel room to have sex with you, I mean, I'm just saying, are you going to look at their ID every time? You're probably too wasted on drugs to fuck. A lot of these people are probably just too wasted on drugs. They're like, oh, we got to card you at the door, And that's my whole point. That's been my whole point the whole time. So defending these things, I'm not defending them. I'm just saying that we have to look at it with historical context and context of our mores now, because things are different. Obviously, things are different. Now, I've talked a lot about, feminism on this channel too, and how I think like things like affirmative consent can be misconstrued and go way too far into this territory of authoritarianism. And that's all I'm talking about. I don't think we should, I had a family member that was an adult, 1 year older than his girlfriend. And the mom, I think at the time, this is like 30 years ago, by the way. People watching this who know me probably know who I'm talking about. The mom wanted to charge my brother. Oh, it was my brother. Okay, I'm sorry. It was my brother. I shouldn't be talking about this stuff. He's deceased, so it's fine. He was almost charged because he was 1 year older than his girlfriend, and it was above the age. She was underage. He was 1 year older. 1 fucking year older. And he almost went to jail. He was a problematic person in general in so many ways. But the people, it takes one. We're coming to a place where nobody has any volition for anything. They'll blame something else or someone else or some big organization or institution or social group for their problems. And that's why we have all this shit. Just like you blame, you know, blame other people for everything, all your problems or all your issues that you have. It just gets ridiculous. It's just like, oh well, it's because of patriarchy, or or it's on the other side, it's because of the communists, or whatever. It's like all this stuff, or the liberals, or it's like nobody has any fucking takes responsibility for themselves. And my daring thing is that some of these situations with regards to this problematic thing that I talk about, which I've talked about a lot on my channel because of certain, politically correct people were pushing certain narratives against musicians that had recently died. That's pretty much how the subject came up. And also, with regards to Carl Logan, because I questioned at the time whether or not it was more related to what I'm talking about and not what turned out to be, which was, in my still opinion, I think there's a degree. I think there's a spectrum. I think Carl Logan is far worse than fucking Mick Jagger, maybe. I think he's far worse. Is that wrong to have a spectrum of these behaviors and beliefs? Is that wrong, or is it all the same? Oh, if you're 18 and the girl's 17, you're a fucking predator. Oh my God. No. That's insane. That's insane. There's a spectrum. That's all I'm saying. That's all I ever said. But yeah, I question whether or not Carl Logan was partly, pursuing it. If he was busted for something less despicable than he was, and it turns out, unfortunately, he was not. I was wrong, and and that's all I'm talking about. So we were talking about these things. We have to have a spectrum, and that's my whole problem is when cancel culture. My worry is when cancel culture goes after people for things that were pretty much normal, quote unquote, and maybe they were never normal, but more accepted back in the day, when even the people that were participating in it, you read these groupie bios, and a lot of them just look back on the days, and I'm not talking about age things with this. I'm just talking in general. They look back on it like, oh, I love that time. Oh, I was with the whole I don't know. I did Fog Hat, or whatever. It's like you look back and it's like they're glamorizing their own behaviors from back then. And is that a bad thing? It's choice. They chose to do that. And I'm not saying that there's not some problematic times in your life when choice is a little bit, or the other C word is a little bit more questionable or sketchy. Of course there's not. Of course there is. I'm just saying we have to treat this with nuance. That's all I'm saying. And that's why I defended a certain film director, not for what he supposedly did to his adopted daughter or whatever, or stepdaughter or whatever, but actually for, his movie, having younger women in his movies. I mean, I don't think that that's indicative of what he did, because of what he possibly did. That's what I was saying in my comments. I was like, no, there's a difference. There is a difference. There's a difference, like I said, between what Def Leppard did backstage in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1985, or July 6, 1985, or whatever. Or I think they were. I'm just making this shit up. Or Motley Crue did in 1985. And and of course, there's problematic things with that, of course, too. But, as obviously we know. And what, Carl Logan wanted to do, or what, Cosby did, there's a big fucking difference. And that's all I'm saying. We have to look at this nuance. And now, sometimes people do not look at the nuance with that. And that's my concern. That's my concern with that stuff. And people might see this video, oh, you're the CEO of this company that's successful, or, down the road, I might be canceled for some of my shit. I wouldn't be surprised. Like my anti-lockdown stuff or whatever, I wouldn't be surprised. But I'm doing this YouTube video, just kind of I'm going to put that fish out there and see if this gets this gets any shit. I'm just saying we have to look at some nuance. We have to look at a spectrum of behaviors and ideas and beliefs with regards to this whole subject. And, in general, sexuality is very complicated. One person might not respond the same. I know if I was, uh, just to be weird, if there are certain parts of my life, in a way, I'm glad that I lost my V card at such a later age, as you call it, because I was very emotionally vulnerable and very, how can I put this? Very attached and needy and weird as a teenager. Now, possibly you could say maybe if I had a normal path with all that stuff, like, okay, well, my first time, blah, 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 and then, oh, I fell in love with her, I got really weirded out, and then, but I met someone else because the grapevine, through the grapevine, and then that happened, and then, if I had a normal uh, childhood slash adolescence slash, early adulthood, maybe it would have been better, but I would say at the time I was very vulnerable and very emotionally fragile. So it's possible if I would have lost my V card earlier than I did, I would have been really fucked up over it. So I understand, especially when you're that age, that there are issues with that. But I mean, I'm talking about like some of these famous like tell-all books by these groupies, that come out and they said they fucking knocked, they knocked the hotel door down, or they hid inside the closet just to do it with Jeff Beck or whatever. It's like there's a difference with as far as the personal volition of the person. Regardless, there's still a spectrum of things, even if they are to the Y word, OUNG. I'm talking about, obviously not, obviously over a certain age even then, though, which most of them are. If you have sexual feelings, you're over a certain age, usually. It should be. So that's all I'm really saying, is there has to be a spectrum. And I was worried, I guess, several years ago that these things wouldn't be explored and people would be starting to cancel some of the famous rock stars and musicians from years past, yesteryear, because a lot of them participate in this behavior. I think, I hate to say this, but like, unless you were maybe Striper, I doubt you were carding people backstage, at the even some of the fucking more bookworm kind of bands. Fucking Rush, who knows? Maybe in the 70s they were banging around with some, a lot of groupies or something of questionable character intact, or obviously we know Kiss's story with some of their song titles and some of their even stage banter. I have Kissology like volume 2 or something, and he's like, I'm not going to do a Paul Stanley impression on the video, but it was, I'm an eternity. I'm not going to do it, but I'm just saying. So yeah, I could defend myself and say that I want to look at the nuance of these situations because of these factors. So I am very defensive when it comes to this, because it's like things were different at that time. And there's a substantial difference between the H word and the P word. There is. I mean, when you go to the P word, you're talking about people. It's just not that is where I would say there's a spectrum there. So, I mean, it's funny that anybody that would be into the H word would be into the P word kind of stuff, but who knows? Maybe it's just like desensitization, and they go that route or something, and they're into the H word behavior, and then they go to the P word behavior. Who knows? I don't know. I'm not into either one, by the way. I should note that I'm not into it. Now, that said, people might find my predilection, one of my predilections, kind of problematic themselves. I like, like I said, the middle 20s, and that's might be problematic to some people that want to think I'm my power dynamics because I'm. almost that age, if you could read my lips. Um, I'm up there, I'm up there versus where I was and where I was. But people might probably find that day 20 something is problematic because of the age. So that's where it really comes in. That's why I am defensive about some of that stuff. Plus, I want to defend my favorite musicians. So, do I think it's wrong at this time in 2021 for a musician to take a woman backstage? UNDRAGE. Do I think that's wrong? Well, sure. I don't think it's right necessarily, as far as, but I think there's nuance. I think like if it depends on even the age back then. I mean, I remember TYT, Chink and Anna were talking about the what the age of the sea should be, and that was kind of surprising if you look back. It's it rhymes with Christine, just like the Kiss song. What they wanted it to be, and that is a societal thing that is accepted at some places, and the power dynamics do exist. I mean, I do believe they exist, but are you going to call, like, for example, just because someone's an older age doesn't mean there's a power dynamic, and that's where it really comes down to. I don't like this power dynamics talk because it's so fucking it's so like subjective. It's like, let's say I dated someone that was 25, right? And I'll just say I'm above 30 and, getting up there. Most people probably figured out from my other videos where I am. But some feminist article might say, "Oh my God, I'm committing this. I'm doing." Power. I posted my video about this years ago about this article about power dynamics. About there was some guy, he was a male feminist in this article, and he was saying, "I even question the power dynamics between me and my girlfriend. We're only 2 years apart." It was the most fucking ridiculous thing I ever read, and you would question me like I'm some kind of I have some predatory predilection because I don't like postmenopausal. I mean, that's coming. That's not yet, but I'm just saying I'm not that old. But I don't prefer like women that are close to menopause. So I'm fucking problematic for that, or I'm fucking problematic for thinking that younger women in their 20s and 30s look better than 40 and 50, because that's just society brainwashing, I guess, whatever. But I'm problematic for that. That's why I'm defensive about this is because of that. Because I don't like these articles that say I'm problematic and I'm such a fucking edgy person for preferring younger women and stuff. So that's really where the defense comes from. I don't think it's right for rock stars to, take a certain demographic of young women backstage. But I think we have to look at it in a nuanced way. That's all I'm saying, because otherwise we cancel everybody. I mean, it's one thing to cancel Ted Nugent for being a douchebag, but it's another thing to cancel, like, Iron Maiden happened to, like, be found that they had some kind of girl backstage, groupie backstage, and it wasn't even it was found out somehow. But of course, it's like, if they're actually committing some kind of crime. See, that's the thing. If these groupies were not completely, I mean, of all ages, if there was something really bad done, there would be more accusations. Look at all these accusations that are like fucking 30 years old and shit. If there was more of this happening with that demographic of women, I'm saying, if they felt that way, they would come out probably. I mean, obviously, Gene Simmons has his own problems with that. I would tend to believe, with all his like lawsuits and his settlements and stuff. So maybe some of them were quietly settled, is my point. But I would say there would be more of it if these women that were at a certain age, doing these rock stars, felt violated in any way. They would probably come. I mean, I would say more, you would hear more about it. You would hear about this more, rather than actual assault happening, actual things happening, and them coming out. It's like, it's like the people that complain about Me Too, in a way, are just as deplorable as people think. And I'll tell you why. because you think about this, it's like, it's not every actor that's being accused. It's not every rock star that's being accused. As a matter of fact, it's pretty fucking minimal. If you think about it, you know, you hear about Harvey Weinstein or fucking Bill Cosby or I'm going to see if this YouTube goes up. All these people. It's not like every musician, every hair metal musician from the 80s, or, you know, every fucking rock star from the 70s or 60s that is accused of this stuff. See, that's why that has to be a nuance, because some of these people were in situations with bad power dynamics, or, dare I say, illegality involved in some of these encounters. I'm sure there were, but they're not coming forward now and saying, oh my God, I feel so violated by Mott the Hoople for what I did in 1976, you know, even though I was only that much years old, you know. That's my whole point. We got to look at nuance. But yeah, so I'm doing this video as kind of as a defense and a response to some YouTube comments that had. So and also that I realize this channel is gonna cause some ruckus maybe, but I don't care. If you give me a chance to explain myself in less than 240 characters, then I will be explaining myself. So that's all.